Hey everyone, this is Oscar from Underdog, and today I want to do a very simple thing. I want to walk you through the workflow that I would usually have when I would go into a project and adjust the volumes. And then I want to show you the two main challenges that I run into time and time again and how I solve them. Okay, so first let me show you a little bit the workflow. This is a project that I got from my partner Anton. Together with Anton, we have a project called Face the Sun. Follow us on Soundcloud and on Instagram. And the idea of Face the Sun is to do melodic house in some way. Okay, so he sends me this project and it's already looking very, very good. And so what I'll usually do, right? First of all, I'll bounce a version of it to audio just the way it is, so that way I know exactly how it was before I started working on it, right? I can always A/B test against that. And what I'll then do is I'll find a place where it's very, very dense, where there's a lot of elements playing. For example, here after the climax. And when I hit play there, you'll see something like this. Cool. It's important that the kick is playing, it's important that the bass is playing, and it's important that there's quite a dense collection of elements playing at any given moment. Now, in terms of volumes, I will check that all the elements are playing in the green, right? That they're all green over here, all the meters, they're all green. Everything has a bit of headroom. Everything has a bit of headroom, and then all of this is going into the master where it is hitting this limiter as the last thing in the signal chain. So remember that all your elements want to have some amount of headroom, and then on the master you want to use that limiter to eat up all the available headroom so that in the end the file that you're going to export basically has almost no headroom, so that the ceiling is set to minus 0.3 or something around that. This is a very rudimentary way to self-master your tracks, right? And basically what we're doing here is, you could call that gain staging, just making sure that our volumes are appropriate at every point of the signal chain. Now, when the song is gently touching the limiter, sometimes it's hitting it quite hard. But anyway, I'm not here to optimize that too much. The idea is to hit this limiter very little. So let's put it around here. Yeah, cool. And now, so the next question that I'll have is, do all the elements have the appropriate volume compared to each other? That's really the mix balance question. And so what I'll do often is I'll solo an element. Here, let me take an even smaller section. Just listen to that kick. And then I'll start soloing other elements alongside it. So for example, does that sound about right? You know? And I might take an entire group, turn it down, and bring it up until it sounds correct next to the kick. In this case, we don't want the kick to sound too massive, and we want this high percussion to be very present, so maybe this is appropriate. And I'll do this with various combinations of things. Okay, so here I am trying to judge the volumes of everything. And when in doubt, bring it all the way down and bring it back up until it's a bit too loud. I think, yeah, -4 is where I had it at. I like that. And I think the musical message of this section of the song is about these strings. So we want these strings to really be the dominant element. Cool, cool, cool. So this is my workflow, right? I'm just trying to get perspective of the relative volume of all these elements. When any particular element is stepping consistently on too many other elements, maybe I will compress it a bit to get its volume to be more stable. Maybe I'll shave out some of the frequencies using an EQ to make the element a bit thinner and make a bit more space for all the other elements. But this is the basic job of achieving some kind of mix balance, right? But now let's come back to the challenges. Like I said, there are two challenges, right? And the first one is lack of perspective. I very often lose perspective because after listening to a loop for a while, your brain just starts to think, this sounds pretty good. And so your brain doesn't really know anymore what an objectively good song sounds like. So, for example, especially the balance of the kick and the hi-hats, I often have a tough time judging, is this too bright or too dark? Are the hi-hats up too much in your face, or are they buried too far in the mix? And so the main solution to this is to have a reference track, right? And a reference track, what you do is you just make an audio track and you place an audio file on the audio track. And then on the audio track, you make sure that the external out is set to your sound card so that it doesn't pass through the master. You don't want this passing through the processing that's on your master channel. You want this to go straight into your ears. So you set the external out there, you deactivate it, and then you solo the reference track. Notice how the highs are quite present here, much more than I would have remembered. So let's focus particularly on the upbeat hi-hats. I feel like I can bring forward the upbeat hi-hat quite a bit to be on the level of this track. So I'll find that hi-hat. Yeah, nice. And there's two ways that I can bring it forward. Pure volume, just bringing up the volume, or putting an EQ on there and boosting the frequencies that I like. For example, the very highs. I could do it with a shelf as well. In this case, it's quite a thin hi-hat, so the volume or the EQ are both going to do similar things. So what I'll do instead is I'll just bring up the gain a bit. Let's listen in the mix. I can do the inverse movement, make it a bit brighter even by ducking some of the low. And now let's listen. So there, thanks to the reference track, I knew that my track could use quite a bit more sharp highs, and so I had the liberty to bring up those highs in my hi-hat. So the first challenge was lack of objectivity, and the answer was reference tracks. Now the second challenge is getting distracted by the sub bass of your track. I get this a lot, especially because I've tried to produce a lot of techno in my time, and in techno you've got a lot of sub frequencies, or at least the design aesthetic is a lot about those sub frequencies, and yet most of the musical information that's useful to us is in the mids. And so it's very easy to get distracted, especially in your studio space. When you have nice subs, you might think that your track sounds great, and then you play it on different systems and you find that it doesn't translate. And that's because you're relying too much on those sub frequencies. I do this a lot. So to shortcut this and to regain that perspective, what you can do on your master channel is to put an EQ on there and simply shave off the lows. And I'm talking about everything under maybe 200 hertz. Because now you can't be seduced by that. Now you're only listening to the sound design of the mids. And the sound design of the mids is where the whole story of your track is being told. Whether your song is bright or dark, it doesn't matter. Your mids have to be well designed. And so if you put that low pass filter on there, you're not going to be seduced by that super nice round warm energy. That energy, which in my past, I would have like turned that up. I would have been like, turning it up. I wouldn't do code this drastic, but I would be like, yeah, this sounds great in my studio, I'd be like, it sounds so warm and full and great. And then you take this track out of the studio and it just sounds muffled and completely terrible. So the goal here is just to do this and make sure that the mids are well sound designed. This is especially another trick. Remember the wine tasting, but for kicks that I did a few weeks ago? It's another way of listening to how badass does your kick actually sound if you take away the fundamental frequency. Especially in techno sound design, that's important. In this track, it's just a little kick, right? It's not that important. But in some techno tracks, especially with big distorted kicks and a lot of rumble, you might again be seduced by the low end. And so putting that high pass filter on there to listen to the mids is a super helpful trick. So this track is for Face the Sun. At some point you'll find it on the Face the Sun SoundCloud. Follow us there. If you want to learn electronic music production fundamentals from absolute beginner level, you might want to check out my Foundations of Electronic Music course. It takes you from absolute beginner to intermediate level producer. I mean, if I think about it, it's the system that Anton, my Face the Sun partner, went through, because when I met him, he was very, very, very new and very beginner. And after the Foundations course, he's coming out with tracks more or less like this. So draw your own conclusions, what you think about that. Come show us on the Discord channel what you did with these workflow tools. And until next time, stay producing, be good to one another, and take care. Bye-bye.